Coach, thank you very much for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Wonderful having you. And as a former Division III soccer player, it's an honor and a privilege.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And please don't call me Coach. Call me Jay. It's a long story, but Jay's good enough.
All right, Jay. Thank you. So you may not realize this, but we probably have a 35-year history, at least in my own mind. 1987, I was a freshman at the University of Mount Union, and we traveled to this place called Ohio Wesleyan, a New Jersey boy that I'd never heard of the school before, but I heard you guys were really good. You had a monster. I don't remember much, and I'll explain, but you had a monster of a goalkeeper called Jeff Kaplan, who was, I think he was one of the best in the country, but he was definitely, when anybody taught goalkeepers in sort of the Midwest, he was the guy.
Right.
So we go down. There's two things I remember from the game very clearly. One is you walked out on the field for warm-ups with a golf club. I think it must have been a 6-iron or a pitching wedge. I don't know. And which struck me as, wow, this is odd for a whole number of reasons, but hey, that was cool. The second thing I remember about the entire game is a ball gets played through, second half, we are down 2-0. Ball gets played through 20 or forwards. It's a one-on-one. I come out for the ball, grab the ball. I don't know what happened, but I got hit in the head, knocked unconscious. And all I remember is being asked, do you know what the score is? And I turned around to look at the scoreboard, and it was 2-0. And so since then, and I kid you not, since then, whenever I get crazy ideas that come into my head, including this channel, I blame that game against Ohio Wesleyan. So anyhow, long story, but yeah, that's my history with you. So to start, look, you're a legend, right? And for a lot of folks, you've been at Ohio Wesleyan since '77. You're 45 years, winningest coach in men's soccer history. I think the tally that I'm aware of, 723, 724, somewhere in that range.
I think it's 738 now. I don't think they had the last season in there, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And you're the first NCAA in any division to reach 700 win mark in soccer. Can I just ask you this is quite simple? What's been the key to your success? I mean, I think a lot of coaches would be like, man, if I could trade spots with you, I would.
Well, I don't think they would at my age. Maybe 30 years ago they'd do it, but it's complicated, as you well know. Our program is based on relationships and empowerment, and it has been since the beginning. My players call me Jay and don't call me Coach. As I said, that's a long story. We probably don't have time for that. And I empower my players in all aspects of the program. You know, what uniforms do we want? Who do we want to play? What tournaments do we want to go to? I try to make the program more than just 4 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. To me, a team is 4 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon. A program is the other 22 hours in the day. And I've told I've got a lot of former players who are out coaching and doing their thing, a lot of former assistant coaches. And I tell them that to me is really the common denominator and the foundation of our program. And in addition to that, my never-ending search for new stuff. I mean, I have read hundreds of books of other coaches, all men, women, basketball, European, whatever. And my theory has always been, if I can get one thing out of each of those books that will help this program, then the book is worthwhile. And many of those books reaffirm what we've been doing at Ohio Wesleyan, and I get some new stuff out of many of those books. So we want to make the program a significant part of our players' college experience. And I've got so many anecdotal examples of that, that just in my mind cement that what we do here is right, and it's good, and it's going to continue.
Mhm. I mean, would you attribute that? I mean, the remarkable thing is how consistently good every year you are. Like, is that, would you attribute that to that type of consistency and the types of players you obviously attract into your program?
I hope so. I think obviously you hit the nail on the head.
Mhm.
No program is any good without good players. I mean, you wouldn't be talking to me right now if we didn't get good players. That's how it is. And so, yes, I am very proud. You know, we've won a couple national championships, blah, blah, blah. I am very proud of the consistency of the program. I think people don't realize how difficult that is. And even the people on this campus at Ohio Wesleyan don't realize that. You know, what's happened is people just come to expect our program will be successful this year like it always has been. Well, it's hard. It's really, really hard work. And as I said, yes, I think the empowerment and I think the relationships that we build on this in this program are the key to this successful program over a period of time. I mean, I've been to too many damn weddings, and they're all the same. The groom is an Ohio Wesleyan soccer player, and 5 out of the 6 groomsmen are his teammates. And of course, the 6th spot is the bride's brother. He's got to be in there somewhere. But I mean, the relationships that happen here are just, I mean, they're crazy and they're great. I can never remember what you call this. It's a chat room or something on my phone. I'm on like 5 or 6 different chats with different groups of our players and different generations of our players. And it's amazing to me how guys who we coached in the early 80s still talk to each other. They're still watching soccer while the game's going on. They're still talking to each other. And I think it's really cool. And if I could, as an kind of an example of what I'm trying to talk about, in 2011, we were in San Antonio in the Final Four. We played Montclair State on Friday night and beat them, I don't know what it was, 4-0 maybe or something like that. In the stands that night were 70 plus Ohio Wesleyan players who just flew down on their own dime. It was the first weekend in December, getting ready for the holidays. They didn't know anybody on the field, but what they knew was that Ohio Wesleyan was playing for a national championship. When we beat Montclair on Friday night, over 50 guys flew in Saturday morning to join them. So we had like 130 or 140 former players going back to my first team in 1977 in the stands cheering our guys on. And you know, Paul McGinley at Trinity, good friend of mine, organized a game in the afternoon for our guys, and kind of an alumni game. It was fantastic. At the end of the game, our benches were facing across the field to the stands. And at the end of the game, all of our guys on the field and on the bench ran across the field and jumped into the stands to celebrate with the alums. And I mean, it was just and my wife came up to me as I was watching, just kind of shaking my head. And she said, "Jay, that's what your program's all about. And it's got nothing to do with soccer." And since she is infinitely smarter than I am, it finally dawned on me. And look, I knew we had a good thing going. I mean, I can read statistics and so on, and I knew good things happened in the program, but that, in my mind, really cemented my understanding of what happens in this program. You know, you work so hard for so long, you kind of miss that sometimes. You're unable as a coach at times to step back and have a look and say, what am I really doing? What have I really done with this program? And that was a very good learning experience for me.
Mhm. That's remarkable. I always wonder about like how involved alumni are in soccer programs, and it sounds like your guys from previous generations are definitely well connected into the program, which is again remarkable. Um, speaking of how difficult things were, you jumped right into the head coaching position at Ohio Wesleyan in '77, and I think it was your first collegiate coaching job. Um, I mean, how did it take any time to adjust to that role in Division III? And then let me ask, I'm putting in quotes now, air quotes, your worst season on record was that first year, and it was like 11-5-2. And I don't think it was bad. I think it was just because you didn't play as many games seemingly as the years went on. But what was that first year like for you as a new head coach?
I almost left Ohio Wesleyan after that first year. It was absolutely brutal. I was hired as head coach of the soccer program and the lacrosse program. Both programs were good,
Mhm.
and had been to, sporadic NCAA, maybe soccer 1 or 2 NCAA tournaments, lacrosse the same. And I was an assistant professor of physical education, so I was in the classroom as well as on the field. And my first day at Ohio Wesleyan, I'll never forget it. I was nervous because it was my first coaching gig in college. I was an assistant coach at Ohio State getting my PhD, and a head coach in Europe where I was teaching for a variety of sports, but never at the college level. So I put a soccer ball under my arm, kind of my blanket. I
Yeah.
was really nervous, and I got the guys together and I said, okay, guys, we're going to spend the first 2 days going over activities that we're going to do repeatedly. And we've got names for them. And so that when I say, okay, we're going to do the man you all know what it's going to be. Well, the captain took the ball out from under my arm and he said, Coach, you don't understand how it works at Ohio Wesleyan. The captains do all the coaching, and the coach sits up in the top of the bleachers and reads the New York Times. And I took the ball back and I said, well, that's going to change. And if you guys don't like that change, then you can leave. So the tension, and then we start out 0-3-3.
Mhm.
And the tension it was brutal. I remember clearly calling my father early October saying, I'm from Boston, saying,
Mhm.
Dad, I'll be back after this season. I hate this place. I hate these players. Um, it just isn't working out. But then something happened. I'm not quite sure. And I think as you just suggested, I think we won 10 or 11 games in a row and made the OAC, in those days, Ohio Athletic Conference championship game. Did not make the NCAA tournament. But in those days, I didn't know what the NCAA tournament was. I mean, I had no clue about anything. And trust me, I wish I had some of the teams that I've coached back, as we all do.
Mhm.
But it got better. The lacrosse season, we did make the NCAA tournament, won the conference, the Midwest Lacrosse Association. Part of the problem was there was this jealousy maybe between the lacrosse and the soccer people. I mean, can you imagine in today's NCAA Division III world, somebody being a head coach of 2 sports, just
Yeah.
wouldn't happen. And so there was no spring lacrosse. There was no, you know, spring soccer, no fall lacrosse. And they were kind of all fighting for the new guys, you know,
Attention.
no question about it. So it was really, really bad. But I survived and stayed. And thank goodness I had a supportive athletic director who was very, very helpful. And here I am, 45 years later.
That is remarkable. Um, let me ask you, of in all those years, would you say, is there any one team that you think is the best team you've ever coached in those 45 years? And I hate to put you on the spot with that, because if you have some of your former players watching, they'll be like, no, my team was better.
Oh, I hear that all the time, believe me. I think the team that won the 2011 national championship deserved to be national champs. I mean, we were really, really good. Our first game of the season, we played Messiah, who was defending champ, lost to them 2-1 in, I believe, overtime, but it doesn't matter. We lost 2-1, and then we won like 23 straight games, totally dominating people, outscoring people. Like, we averaged 5 goals a game, and they, just 1 or whatever goals against. So that was a really good one. We've had 4 or 5, maybe even 6 teams who were undefeated in the regular season going into the tournament, none of whom won the national championship, a couple of whom lost in the first round. I mean, really, really disappointing. My son's senior year, we lost to Calvin in the second round at our place at home, and we were really good. We were 20-0-1 going in. And you know how soccer is. It's just difficult. Then on the other hand, our first national championship team in 1998 we had the worst record in my career at the end of the season. I think we were 13-6 or something like that. That's the highest number of losses that we've had in my 45 years. And then we get a hot goalkeeper, we get on a roll, win 5 straight games, and win the damn national championship. So I'm like, who can figure this stuff out? It just doesn't. But we've had a ton of really good teams, a ton of different errors at Ohio Wesleyan. I mean, even last year's team, we only lost 3 games, all 1-0, 2 of those in overtime, and we were really, really young. So who knows? It's just soccer's weird, Soccer's weird. A lot of good, really good teams.
Yeah. Oh, I don't doubt it. The 3 years we played against you, I think we lost all 3. The second year we lost 2-1, but it was a game. But we always knew that playing you were just a different level than we were, and I see it in your teams. It just, again, how you've done that over the years is just incredible. Speaking of national championships, you got the 2 under your belt. You've been to the NCAA something like 42 or 43 times. And I guess you already answered it, right? Like, was there anything in hindsight that was different to those national championship teams that in previous years? Like, is there, of all you can't guess, right? You can't figure this out because, like you said, soccer is soccer. You step on the field, everything can go out the window. But when you look back, is there something you're like, yeah, that's probably a special element of that team that no one else had? Or does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, and it's a difficult question. I think generally, you probably know the 4 phases of a group becoming a team, which are, I've got a mental block now, which are forming, storming, norming, and then performing. I believe that very few teams get out of the storming phase, very few. And I think the teams that have done really well at Ohio Wesleyan have gotten through the storming phase to the norming phase because we get good players. And if we can get those players focused on the team concept, the team principles, then we're going to be pretty good. But many teams, for example, our first 1998 championship team, we were a mess. We were 13-6 at the end of the season. There was infighting still. There were guys who were disappointed with their playing time. There were all these things. And then, and in fact, we lost the last game of the season at Bethany 3-0, if you can believe it. And I was driving home with my youngest son. He said, "Dad, are you going to get in the tournament?" I said, "There's no way we're getting into the tournament." And as it was, we were the last team selected because we won the conference. And something happened, which I heard years later when we got home from Bethany. The guys called a team meeting on their own. my guess is over a couple of beers, and they decided that all this crap that was going on has to stop, and let's do the best we can and see what happens. We win the national championship. So, I mean, as I said, it just doesn't make sense. The second championship team had a similar situation when we lost to Messiah. Apparently, the captains called the group together. Similar story. They talked to each other. They did whatever they had to do, and we ripped off 23 in a row. So it's getting through that storming phase that I think is so critical at all levels of sports. I think it's difficult because all of the kids we bring in were the the leaders and the best players on their club team, on their high school team, and now they come in and freshman year they're not even playing, and they're saying, what the hell is what's going on here, and it's hard for them to understand it. It's really, really hard. I said, well, you could play somewhere for all 4 years if you would like. You wouldn't win. Do you want to go to the national tournament? And I think I can say with a bit of positivity, do you want to go to the national championship? Well, you've got a 95% chance of coming to Ohio Wesleyan. I mean, that's how it is. So, and I think, 95% of what I do and have done over the years is on the mental side. I mean, I just think at this level, in fact, I hardly do any on-field coaching now. I'm on the field, but my assistants do the coaching. And, you talk to someone like Mike Krzyzewski, and he and I agree that in the top 10 priorities of a coach and a team, X's and O's are like 7 or 8. I walk around the offices in the athletic department. I hate to say this because this means I'm old. I see all these young coaches, on the whiteboard doing all these X's and O's and all these special plays and all these things. And I stick my head in and I go, that's not the answer. That's not the answer. Trust me, it's just not the answer. And as I said, Krzyzewski agrees, and he's done pretty well. So does Steve Kerr, so does Greg Popovich, so does Pete Carroll. They all understand that. Bill Walsh, the coach from the 49ers, wrote a great book, The Score Takes Care of Itself. So he's an American football coach. And in the days he wrote this, he was an outlier. I mean, because American football coaches in those days were all X's and O's.
X's and O's, yeah.
Yeah, and now, I use Bill Walsh's standards with our team every single year, and there's got nothing in there about a forward pass or a run play or anything like that. So I think, the emphasis we have on the mental side has been very good for us. Since the moment I set foot on this campus, I took a course when I was getting my PhD, a graduate course at Ohio State on management by objectives, which in those days was a new concept. Now it's relatively common in business. And as I sat there, I said, I changed it in my mind to motivation by objectives. I carried that with me. All it is goal setting. In those days, nobody did goal setting. Now more people, not enough, but more people do it. Every single team I've coached has done work on goal setting, which is the number one strategy to create, develop, whatever, intrinsic motivation. I think that is the only common denominator of all of our teams. And so I've got to give credit. I've got to give credit to that process.
This just popped into my head. I mean, you're pretty unique in that. I think a lot of people try to emulate sort of that style and what you're doing and setting goals and whatnot for teams, especially now with the coaches that I'm speaking with. And, and I'm sure the coaches who've come out of, or the players who've come out of your program who ended up coaching. I mean, I think just down the road from you, Brandon Bianco, right, at Denison. I mean, he spoke of a lot of similar ways. My question is, and you mentioned this about, you bring in sort of the best players who they were the best in their club or they're best in their high school, and then they come into your program. and they're not that anymore, very clearly. How long does it take them to assimilate and buy into those goals that are set for the team? Because to me, that's the I look at it, that's the real start of, if you can consistently incorporate those freshmen into your team's thinking, you stand much better success than if a class is so, discontent that they cause troubles whether they realize it or not.
Yes, good question. And you said something about when we set team goals. Well, the answer is in part that the first day of preseason, the team, not me or the coaching staff, the team sets our team values for the year and the team goals for the year. And that's the first step for everybody to buying in. And that's the first step to help us get through the storming phase. In October, I can say, okay, team, one of your goals was to win the conference. Tomorrow we're playing Worcester. We're not having a very good practice. These were your goals, not my goals. I'm not even in the room when that happens.
Yeah.
And so that helps. In fact, my son is the head coach of USL Loudoun United, DC United second team. And he flew me in last week, and I did this same thing with his team. And they've won. It's got nothing to do with me, but they've won their first 2 games for the first time ever. And the team really got excited about doing this, and our team gets excited about doing this. So that's difficult. The second thing we do after they get the team goals and values set, is I meet with all the freshmen. Now, in our locker room, we have a wall that's filled with All-America plaques. And we need more space, because that whole wall is filled up. And there are 4 guys on that wall who did not get a shirt as a freshman, didn't play a minute, didn't even dress for a minute. And now all 4 of them end up on the All-America wall. And 3 of the 4, behind me is the academic All-America wall, 3 of the 4 on the academic All-America wall. So I say, freshmen, you're not going to like this, but here's the light at the end of the tunnel. You can still achieve what you want to achieve here. You just have to be patient, work, and blah, blah, blah. Then we have a mentor program where our freshmen will be assigned an upper class player with some commonality, same major, same position, whatever. And it's that upperclassman's job to make sure that to talk to the freshmen. I tell them they have to talk to the freshmen every single day, and they've got to answer the kids' questions. They've got to be there for the kid. They got to pick the kid up when he's down. So it's a process. It doesn't happen in a day, a week, a month. It's an ongoing cyclical process where we continually. My first thought was browbeat, but that's really an overstatement. But we really work with these freshmen. The entire team works with these freshmen all during the season.
Yeah.
So it's difficult, and things are changing. Every freshman wants to start, and if they didn't want to start, I don't want them. They want to start. They think they should start. Their parents think they should start. I have more calls from parents recently than I've had in my first 40 years. It's nuts. And I simply say, Mr. Smith, how old is John? Oh, he's 18. Well, you tell him to get his ass into my office, and he and I will talk. All right. And I just have no time for that. I mean, can't these people see that I want to win? Look at the damn record. I mean, come on. If John could help us win, he'd be playing. It's really simple. Yeah. But anyway, so does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. That was fantastic. I'm that's funny that with the parents. That's I mean, I guess that's the way of the world these days, right? Like with my kids, I purposely try not, unless there's something really serious going on, I really try not to be. I try to be on the sideline in a corner not yelling, not just I'm just watching and let things play out. Their own talent will surface, right? That's the way I look at it. And all the players, right?
I mean, I agree with you. I have two sons, both of whom were All-Americans. One was a golfer, one was a soccer player. My oldest son is a professional coach. He played professionally. And it's really hard, isn't it? Just to sit there and watch.
Yeah.
But I did the exact same thing. And I think it helped them reach their potential. I really do. Instead of me, I don't yell at my players. I don't yell instructions on the field.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't yell at officials. I want to maintain some kind of consistency out there. And I mean, if you yell at players on the field, what you yelled at them about is already over and it's gone. Yeah. And they don't listen anyway. So why bother? If I yell at the officials, the players say, hey, Jay's right. This guy's no good. And then thinking about the official instead of their job.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just all part of our culture and environment.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting. And I will say it's whether they realize it or not, that's a very liberating thing for a player, right? I'm sure your players won't talk about how afraid they are of you if they screw up a play on a field or anything, because there's no retribution in terms of you yelling at them, getting in their face or anything like that. That's very liberating as a former player. Like I wish I would have had that experience a little bit more.
And it is, and we have we want our guys to make mistakes, not necessarily in games, but they're going to make mistakes. Yeah. But we never yank a young man out of a game for a mistake. I've done it in 45 years. Yeah. I mean, you know, especially soccer. I mean, soccer just you play 90 minutes and it's 2-1. I mean, how many mistakes happen in that 90 minutes?
Yeah. I also always say, and to my kids, like, and we talk about the games, and we're always on it. I'm always talk to them about just being really honest about how we talk about the game. But I'll also say, no player, there is not a player that I am aware of that makes a mistake on the field and doesn't know they made the mistake. And so just pounding on top of that, it's like, they already know. So
one of the things about motivation that most coaches don't understand is one of the three things necessary for your players to be motivated is a feeling of competency. They have to feel competent when they walk on the field. So why do coaches yell at them all day in practice and yell at them during the game? Because that eats away on the feeling of competency. And now the players are thinking, my goodness, I must really suck or something like this. And their motivation goes south. It just doesn't make sense to me to yell at them.
Yeah. Hey, that is what in terms of Division III soccer, like how much do you think has changed or evolved in terms of the game over that time period? I mean, I remember playing, I mean, if we called that playing back in the 80s, like I'm not sure that was really soccer as I see it now, but I'm just curious as to your perspective.
A lot has changed in Division III. I will say that the number one change in Division III that has impacted the behavior, the play, and all these things is the job description of the coaches in Division III. I don't know who your coach at Mount Union was, but chances are he was a faculty member as well as a soccer coach. I'm a faculty member as well as a soccer coach. I'm a dinosaur. It doesn't happen anymore. Mm-hmm. But if you take somebody like, well, you mentioned Brandon Bianco, and I'm not putting him down. This is just an example. He is a soccer coach at Denison, and he's got a full-time assistant that helps him recruit. Yeah. So the job description of the D3 coaches now is a Division I job description. Where they have to win and they have to recruit. I mean, we at Ohio, I don't pay any attention to it, but we at Ohio Wesleyan, I have a number of athletes that I have to recruit. I don't, as I said, I don't pay attention because I'm a tenured faculty member and they can't do much about it. And the number is just nuts. I mean, it's if I brought in, I forget what it is, 12 or 13 kids a year. Well, that's just too many. I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to cause real problems. But so what I've seen is a change in how the play is. I've always said that Division III soccer is better than Division I. The style of play in Division III is better, but I can't say that anymore because now the coaches have to win. They're yelling and screaming at their kids. They're playing direct soccer
Oh my God. Yep.
dump it down there.
Yeah.
And we adhere to. We play it on the floor. We still play like we play. And that's the number one change in Division III. And it really, when I was hired in 1977, all 25 coaches in the top 25 were faculty members. Last year, I was the only coach in the top 25 was a faculty member.
Yeah.
And when I retire, they're not going to replace me with a faculty member. They'll replace me with a soccer coach.
Wow.
So I think that's impacted everything about Division III.
Yeah. That's interesting that you say that, because that just, as you were talking, I was thinking about my coaches at Mount Union. They all had some, even the assistant who was considered a part-time assistant, but a full-time employee, worked as a faculty member. And then I think all the coaches in the OAC had something else if they were a full-time coach, right?
Yes.
If they were, right, they might have been a part-time coach and then did something else in a year not associated with the school. But yeah, oh, that's interesting. All right, if it's okay, if we can. Oh no, yeah, this is one. All right, so that's soccer in general. Do you think the players have gotten better?
Yes. When I first came here, I never recruited anybody out of Ohio because the quality of the player was not good. I recruited people from the Northeast quadrant of the United States. And so the only kid from Ohio my first 3 or 4 years was our goalkeeper, Terry Collier from Cleveland. But now we have most of our kids are from Ohio. And the level of play, not only in Ohio, but across the country, in my opinion, has improved a great deal. And so that's why, again, I'm proud of the fact that we've been able to be consistent because everybody's getting better. Every year, everybody is better. And even though I don't like the model of coaching in Division III, philosophically, the coaches in Division III are going out and finding better players. So the quality of Division III across the board is much better. Every single year is a war. I mean, everybody's getting better.
Yeah. Let me ask you something to that plan, something that you mentioned earlier about, there are still teams, and I don't know how much you've seen my channel or anything, but I watched in the fall. I sort of got into this kick for reasons I won't mention, that I watched 200 games, probably around 200 games in the fall. I counted passes because I had fundamentally a question where I was like, I watched some really bad soccer games and I'm like, does passing even matter in Division III soccer? So I started watching all these different teams and their type of passing. But there are a ton of teams that I will say don't play the soccer that I would want to play. Like, keep the ball on the deck, possession is your best friend, all those types of things, right? But is the teams that don't necessarily play that way, that play very direct, and I always say, like, want to create as much chaos as possible within the 20 yards so that they can kick a ball in and be lucky? Right. I mean, is that what, because these coaches are now, they're basically have to win? Is that so they take the simplest route to coaching their teams? That, because to me that's the simplest way, right? Like, just get the ball forward. And I just don't know. And
I believe that's the reason. I honestly do. my first 30 or 35 years, most coaches we played in Division III tried to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
But now very few try to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look even at the NCAA champions the last few years in Division III,
Mm-hmm.
or if you watch the Final Four at all,
Yeah.
Most of the teams are direct. I mean, they keep the ball out of their end, they put it in the other end, and as you say, they're hoping to jam it down the throat of the opponents, get it in the goal, and win a game 1-0.
Yeah.
And so passing matters to us, believe me, and there are a handful of others, but not many.
Yeah, that's why I think I'm so enamored. There's a few teams that I'm really enamored by. I mean, Ohio Wesleyan always has been the case for me. Like, man, I wish I would have heard of you guys when I started, because I would have gone there, being from the Northeast. The other is Messiah, because to me, Messiah is, for all intents and purposes, an anomaly. Like they are not a Division III team because of their propensity to keep the ball on the ground. I mean, you never see them, very rarely do you see them force a ball because they just feel like they got to do it. So
let's look at Messiah. I mean, and McCarty's a good friend of mine. I agree with you 100%. Messiah plays the kind of soccer we like to play.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time you won a national championship?
Well, that very true, right? I mean, that's a handful of years, right? Like it's been a while. Yeah.
It's a while because when, and it's the same with me, and I'm not saying we're as good as them or anything. I'm just comparing our styles. I won't change when we play a team that's very direct. Even game, I'm not going to say, okay, guys, first of all, we don't recruit kids who play direct.
Yeah.
So if I say we're going to play direct this half, they're going to look at me like, how do you do that? And so when Messiah, they'll always win the first couple of games in the tournament, handily, do very, very well. But when they get against other teams that are really big, strong, fast, and direct, it's hard as hell to play against them. They don't do very well, and neither do we do very well with that. So
it's like the great equalizer for teams. Hey, I can't control the ball, but man, I'm going to beat you silly. That's the way I look at it. Like, okay, you're playing your strength, but it's so, like I said, of the games I watched, I was so disappointed by that, because I thought, and long story short, I started this channel because I wanted to prove or disprove a lot of my beliefs about the game. I opinionated, and I'm like, I'm going to prove it or disprove with data, talking to people. And I had thought since 1987 that the game had gotten so much better. And then I'm watching teams and I'm like, this reminds me. It's like the only difference is that they play on turf now, when we played on beat up muddy fields, and that's the only difference. There was fundamentally, that was the only difference. And I would argue it seemed like we were better soccer players back then, but anyhow. So it sounds like from your perspective, when you your teams, you have your style, you're going to play it, and you're not impacted by who you're playing. Is that a fair assessment? You don't, meaning I see teams that will play, they go, hey, we're going to be if it's just boils down to formation, we're a 4-3-3 today, and then tomorrow we're going to be a 3-5-1, and then the next day we're going to be, or a 3-5-2, and then the next day we're going to go back to a 4-5-1. I mean, you're pretty consistent in how you show up to play teams?
Yes. Every day in our pregame meal, the guys get a sheet, and the first quarter of the first page at most is a little bit about the people we're playing. Mm-hmm. The rest of the sheet is about what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, look, I tell the team, okay, look, number 11's their playmaker. He's all left foot. Well, look, the reality is by the time our kids get on the field, they're not going to remember that. And they're not going to, I mean, so they're going to go out and they're going to play. We talk to our guys all the time about playing to their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
I have a theory. We Americans spend too much time trying to make weaknesses a strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my opinion is you can't. You can
Yeah.
make weakness manageable,
Mm-hmm.
but your left foot is never going to be as good as your right foot.
Yeah.
So why take away from your strengths trying to make that? Because it's not going to be. It's
Yeah.
so. But anyway, so we're not going to stand up there and tell our guys player for player who we're playing. Well, okay, look, this team's 5-5. They play a 4-3-3. Got to keep an eye on their playmaker, number 6 or whatever. That's about it.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the sheet, the team sheet, is all about us and what we're
Yeah.
going to do. We want focusing on their job when they walk on the field.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting that you say that, to focus on weaknesses into strengths. I also think a lot of coaches always look at weakness first as their determinant for whether a soccer player is good or not, and
Correct.
lose out on all of the good stuff a player does because they can't get beyond, they're not big, they're not fast,
Right.
they're not strong, but man, they're super technical
Well,
and great passer of the ball.
you bring up a great point, and I've said this to all, like Brandon and all the guys who have gone out to coach. You're right about that.
Yeah.
It's easy to find deficiencies in players. It's real easy.
Yeah.
I know nothing about American football, nothing. I've never played it down in my life. I hardly know the rules, but I can tell when these pros screw up. It's easy. But can you find the good things in your players or the good things in your recruits and take what their strengths are and put it on the field in a position where they can be successful with the team? We say, my college roommate, Tony DeChico, says, catch them doing something good.
Yeah.
So today, we have practice today at 4. So today, I will talk to each player on the team. And before the day is over, I will catch them doing something good.
Yeah.
And making sure that, hey, Josh, that was a great blah, 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 blah. Or Josh, great work today. Let's see if you can duplicate that work tomorrow. I'm not going to talk about the mistakes.
Yeah.
Pia Sundhage, I don't know if you know that name.
Yeah. She's Swedish national coach now, or was national team coach. Yeah.
Now she's at Brazil national coach.
That's it. Yeah.
National coach and so on. Yeah. She told me in a conversation a number of years ago, she never shows video of her teams giving up a goal. Never. Because she doesn't want that image in their mind.
That's brilliant.
She'll show images of things that they do well, because that's the image she wants. And most coaches do what? Most coaches show negative things that happen so that we can correct them.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't use any video at all, but but anyway, that's a good point.
That's funny, because I did, when I was playing, and I ended up playing after college and playing professionally, and I did a lot of visualization as a goalkeeper, and I never visualized getting scored on. It was all of the good things that I would do, all of the good things, because it was the I didn't want that image in my head going into a game, like, oh, I'm going to get a ball stuck in between my legs for a game-winning goal, right? So I guess that's the same idea.
You'd be surprised how many players think negatively and using imagery about their negative play in the past. It's unbelievable. It's just ridiculous.
I always tell my guys, like, it's self-defeating, right? Like, you lost before you even stepped on the field. Whether you realize it or not, you've lost, because you have this perception in your head that is not positive, right? That you're going to light it up. Let me ask, from a season perspective, what are your expectations going? Again, your consistency all the time. What were your expectations for this year, especially coming off of that crazy COVID, whatever we're calling it, where nobody really played and it was really difficult time period?
I've learned over the years to temper my expectations. I would like to sit here and tell you that my expectations were to win a national championship, but that's not realistic. In
Mhm.
my mind, every year there were probably, who knows, 15 to 20 schools who could win the national
Yeah.
championship. We're usually in that group.
Right.
And so many things have to go right,
Mhm.
injury, so on and so forth, to win a national championship. People don't understand it. So my expectations, especially this year, were really tempered
Mhm.
because of the fact that we had virtually two classes that I had really not seen play in a collegiate game. I mean, we saw them in practice, we saw them in the recruiting process, and we knew they were good players, but we really didn't know, or I really didn't know how well we would play. So one of the things, and you've heard this a million times, one of the things we talk about all the time is the process. So all we do is focus on the process. And as I told you, Bill Walsh said, the outcome takes care of itself. So
Mhm.
that started in 1996 with me, believe it or not. I can remember exactly how and why I changed my philosophy
Mhm.
uh, of coaching. But that's since 1996, we've been totally process oriented. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's hard, isn't it? You get into the NCAA tournament, it's really
Yeah.
hard not to think, okay, we might win the championship. I mean, even I think that occasionally,
Mhm.
especially when you get in the Final Four, you're going,
Yeah.
okay, two
Okay.
games left.
Yeah.
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 We're,
Yeah. Yeah.
but but we're really process driven.
Mhm.
I don't let my guys talk about the wins and losses. I
Yeah.
don't my guys talk about, I don't even know who our leading scorer was last year because it just doesn't matter. The
Yeah.
leading scorer, I always say to my guys, who was the leading scorer in Division III last year, guys? Of course, nobody can answer that, right? I said, so it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Who won the national
Yeah.
championship in Division III last year? They all know who did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
the difference? We've got a team versus
Yeah.
an individual. Who
Yeah.
cares? So
Yeah. Yeah.
so we're process oriented. My expectations were tempered. We played really, really well and won a ton of games against really good teams. So it's going to be hard for me, and we only graduated three, so
Yeah.
it's going to be hard for me to go forward and not have higher expectations.
Expectations. Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm going
No,
to find.
yeah. That's natural, right? I think that would be natural. Like you have this history of teams that you can sort of benchmark yourself to, right? I mean, ultimately, that's what you're doing every year. I think a coach would do. I do it. Is oh, we were this way here, and I think these pieces can get us even a little bit higher, right? I think that's very natural. Let me ask you, just from a training perspective, I I've said, and what I've always really impressed by how you play is when you're in a defensive posture, you're very organized, you're all bought, all of your guys are bought in. Is that something that you work on a lot during the season, is just how you defend?
It's the first thing we do in preseason every single year.
Hmm.
We and I'm trying to send a message,
Hmm.
guys. Defending is important, and
Hmm.
so the first practice every single year we start with our defense,
Hmm.
and the majority of preseason is all about defending. I
Hmm.
mean, we don't even talk about attacking restarts probably until October 1st. We don't
Hmm.
care. Okay, Joe and Sam, you guys are over the ball. Figure it out, and
Hmm.
then. But defense is really, really important. We have
Yeah.
warm-ups where we defend. We have a sequence of activities where we start with individual defense, 2-man, 3-man, 4-man, and we build to the whole team.
Hmm.
We do something on defending every single week. I would be lying if I said every single day,
Yeah.
but every single week we spend time on the defensive.
Hmm.
I'm not going to say defensive side of the game because that's a football thing.
Yeah.
We spend time defending.
Yeah. 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 It's noticeable. Again, just watching from video that I get a chance to stream, it's very obvious too, because of how quickly your guys get back. They all get into position, and it's like I always say, if they're going to score a goal, it's like, well, because you have to be very good to score a goal on us.
Yeah.
I think and you don't see that in a lot of teams. I think even defensively, teams like to create the chaos so that they could get the ball and clear it out. But
Correct. We have an acronym, DIA, that we use all the time, which is defense initiates attack. So we try to sell to the guys that if they defend well, we're going to get the ball back and we're going to be attacking. And we try to go forward very, very, very quickly. But if opposing coaches have told me for years that our defense is an earmark of our program and our team. We've been in the top 10, in fact, the top 5 defensively the last 4 or 5 years, and we're always in the top 10 goals against and all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, even this year, you only conceded 12 goals, and 3 of those were that crazy tie against Calvin.
Correct.
Yeah. So and I've only seen a team with a better goals against number, and that's with 10, I think 10. 10 was the lowest that I think I've seen, and so that's yeah, I could totally see that. Just to want to focus on a couple players from this past year that I was really impressed with, Hector Gomez and Jagger Brooker. How important were those two? Were those two to your team?
Very important. Both well, Jagger's coming back. He's only a sophomore. Both made All-America. Both are great attacking players. They're different, much different players. Jagger has tremendous speed. Hector doesn't have the speed, but he's got the strength to hold players off. In both cases, I wish they would combine a little more in the final third. So we worked on that all year, but and again, this is part of the mentality that they bring to the program. In high school and club, both of them were the main men on the team.
Yeah.
It was not unusual for the coach to get the ball to Hector or Jagger and tell them, do your thing. So when they come here, and they do their thing really well. Don't get me wrong. I don't know how many goals they scored, but they did pretty well. But I think at the collegiate level, and certainly the professional level, combination play is really, really important in the final third to free people up. So I wish they did that a little bit better, but they certainly were impactful players.
Yeah. I mean, they were a great tandem. When I always said, like, man, defense, if you were a defender and you saw, it always seemed to be Hector would be coming down the left and Jagger would be coming down the right. And to see those two guys come, and I think I would be like, oh my gosh, like we got problems.
Exactly.
But let me just ask you that again, because I think the COVID year for everybody sort of threw in some wrinkles, but what sort of surprised you the most this season about your team?
How well the young guys played. I mean, we were really, really young. I don't know what the breakdown was, but our current sophomore class and current freshman class are really, really good players.
Yeah.
And I was relatively surprised. Because I'm a professor, I don't get off campus much. So what we do in recruiting is my assistant coaches go out, they identify players. I close the deal when they come on campus. So I hadn't seen a lot of these kids play in person before they got here. So to see these young kids, I mean, it was nuts. I was like, wow, we're going to be pretty good for the near future. And that was a surprise because, I told you earlier on that freshmen don't usually play that much here. But if you look at our roster and who played and how long, you'll see that we had a number of freshmen playing this past year, which is unusual for us.
Yeah. That says a lot about those players, right? Like if they're going to get minutes. Let me ask you, just from, because you mentioned the recruiting standpoint, do you go out and do you recruit to fill positions, or are you just looking for good soccer players?
That's a really good question, and I think we're in transition. I have always said, and when I was the main recruiter, I was looking for good soccer players. I've
Mhm.
always felt that there were only two specialists in the game of soccer: you as a goalkeeper and Jagger as a striker.
Mhm.
My opinion is anybody else should be able to play in any other position. So we would look, and in fact, if some kid comes in to me and says, Jay, I'm a left back,
Mhm.
to me, that limits
Yeah.
his movement on the
Yeah.
field just by
Yeah.
virtue of him calling himself a left back.
Yeah.
But the trend right now, and my assistant coaches beat me over the head with it, but the trend right now is to fill positions.
Yeah.
So we graduate a striker, we got to get a striker. Well, we try to do it 2 years down the road. We see
Yeah.
that, okay, Jagger's going to graduate in 2 years. He's an All-American, so we got to bring in a striker, and so on.
Yeah.
So that's the trend today. I'm,
You're not sold. You're
not sold, but it's how
Yeah.
things are going.
Yeah.
And even with the recruits, they want to know. They'll call me up, which is relatively new. Jay, well, where am I going to play? How are you going to use me? That's the
Yeah.
question I always ask, and that's fine. That's fine. Because they want to know. That's fair enough. And I've lost recruits when I say, well, you're not going to come in here and start. I'm going to tell you right now, blah blah blah, and they go somewhere else, which is okay. So we as a program, and I think D3 soccer as a whole, and Division One for years has been recruiting to fill spots, haven't they?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I think that's the trend. That's what's happening now.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. When do you see the players that you recruit? What's the gap that they have in their game from the being a senior in high school and club soccer to then showing up at Ohio Wesleyan? Or is there a gap other than you got a team of really good players that have a little bit more experience at the collegiate level?
The biggest gap between high school and college, in my mind, is the mind.
Mhm.
And as I mentioned before, we do so much on the mental side.
Mhm.
The guys have to keep a notebook. I hate to say that this term is just negative, but I give lectures or presentations over the winter every Thursday. We have a topic: confidence, positive self-talk, goal setting, whatever it was. And because most high school coaches and most college coaches really don't know much about the mental side,
Mhm.
had the mental side in their background,
Yeah.
or they're reluctant to teach it. In fact, they don't teach it. And so that's the biggest thing. The transition to me is 100% mental.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry to ask this. I probably shouldn't. I should know this. What do you teach at Ohio Wesleyan?
I've taught everything in the department over the past 40 years, but right now I teach, it's called mental aspects of sports,
Oh, oh,
and
wow.
psychology,
Okay.
and a coach and a class called leadership and coaching.
Hmm. Okay.
So
So right there, like it perfect fit. It sounds like. Um, Let me ask just a couple more questions because I've taken up a good chunk of your day, and I'm sure you're busy. But what's the best way for a player who's interested in Ohio Wesleyan to sort of get your attention, as a from a recruiting perspective?
and that's changing too. Before, when I didn't have a full-time assistant coach who could get off and do what Matt
Yeah.
does today, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you that I recruited with what I call the shotgun approach. I
Mhm.
would send out letters to coaches and people I know They would recommend players. I would send out a questionnaire to the players. This is pre-internet. And I would try to bring in, as we just talked, good soccer players. I would try to identify good players, bring them in, and so on. With the internet today, the best way for us, for the player to contact us and make himself known is sending us some video. What I do is I don't watch the video. I give it to my assistants. If the video passes the assistant's desk, we give it to our seniors. The seniors have to give the stamp of approval before we will recruit the young man.
Wow.
This is part of the empowerment thing, though.
Yeah.
And they're very, very honest. And they'll say, Jay, I don't think this kid, I don't think, what do you have in mind for him? Well, blah, I'm not sure or, hey, this kid is really good. I think he'll fit right in. The biggest and most positive recruiting activity for us is getting the young man on campus.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens. He'll stay with an upperclassman, not only on the weekend. I think it's just stupid to bring a kid on just for the weekend because then it becomes party central, and I'm not interested in that. So our kids will come in like on Thursday. They'll stay over Thursday night, get some classes on Friday, because that's what they're going to do when they're here. Some stay over Friday night if we have a Friday night game, and so on. And I will ask the hosts on Monday, how was that kid? If the kid doesn't fit in with our guys, then we're not going to recruit him. And I've actually called admissions over the years and say, hey, don't recruit that kid. The first thing he did when he showed up on campus and wanted to go out and get a beer or something like that. Look, I drink beer. I have nothing against beer, but that's not for an 18-year-old recruit on a campus. That's the one thing.
Yeah.
So it's, again, like everything else, it's a process, and we involve our team in the process.
Yeah. Wow, that is a first. Seriously, that's a first that I've ever heard that. That's remarkable. That is, I mean, how much. I guess that goes back to the comments about how involved your alumni are. Well, because they put in so much time and effort outside of the soccer field, right? While they were at Ohio Wesleyan. And so now it's like, I'm not just going to let anybody come in and get to wear the jersey and all the reputation that has been earned over the years if I don't think the kid is worth it, right? Like, or has got some personality that's a little bit different. Okay, last question for you. Do you do like ID camps, and how important do you rank those in your among your many ways of how you recruit somebody? But how important would they be?
They're becoming very important. Unfortunately, as you probably know, most ID camps are money grabs.
Yeah.
And coaches will invite anybody onto their campus, like maybe if it's $75 a day or something like that, with no intent really of recruiting most. We don't do that, and I don't want to sound self-righteous. We just don't do that. It's just not fair to the kids. But we do have a week in the summer where we bring in kids that we're recruiting. It's not a blanket. Hey, come to our ID camp. It's going to be kids who have contacted us, or kids that we've seen play. And there are advantages to this. We can see how the kid works, how he works up, how hard he works in training, what he has to say to his teammates, and all these other things. This past year, there was a really good forward who came to our ID camp last summer, but one of our coaches heard him talk to somebody in line or whatever, and he said something to the effect of, hey, I'm the best one in this camp. I don't know who these other clowns are. This is ridiculous. Now the kid ends up really wanting to come here. We told him no, because I'm not, and he's a goal scorer, and everybody needs goal scorers.
Yeah.
Not like that. We don't need that attitude. So the camps, ours are not money grabs. I'm not trying to make a sell here.
Yeah.
I don't make any money on our camps. I give it to our underpaid assistants. And it gives us an opportunity to see the kid play and the kid to see how we coach, and the food on campus and the dormitories on campus, to get a really, a really in-depth perception idea of what Ohio Wesleyan's all about.
Wow, very good. That was, Coach, that was fantastic. I really do appreciate you taking the time today. This has been one of the best conversations I've had, and I'm gonna put whatever information I glean off the website. I usually put it in the description. So if you get a couple really good goal scorers, you could, pay me that Division III finder's fee that is so lucrative.
You can do that. No problem.
Yeah. So, but really do appreciate it, Coach. Really, really do appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you asking me here.